welcome and sorry for the delay. We had some technical difficulties. I'm here with my friend Helen Fisher. Helen is a biological anthropologist and senior researcher and fellow at the Kinsey Institute, Indiana University. She studies the evolution, brain systems, and cross-cultural patterns of romantic love, mate choice, marriage, adultery, divorce, gender differences in the brain, personality, temperament, business personalities, and the biology of leaderships. She has written 5 internationally best-selling books and served as the chief scientific advisor to Match.com. She has written 6 books, including The Anatomy of Love, Natural History of Mating, Marriage, and Why We Stray. I'm David Levine. This is our 5th or 6th talk on Zoom. I'm co-chairman of Science Writers in New York. I want to thank Joe Bonner for setting this up, and we're going to start. So, Helen, you wrote in the New York Times that it's a great time for singles.
Yes, absolutely.
And I just wanted to tell you that in Hunan, China, when the quarantine ended, they were flooded with divorce requests.
That's right.
So we're not sure about that, but okay. So why is this a great time for singles?
Well, first of all, David, thank you for inviting me, and thank you everybody for joining us. And first of all, back to the Wuhan, they talked about this enormous rise in number of divorces after the lockdown, but they did not ever write about the enormous number of marriages. Now, we don't know because they haven't told us, but, when there's any crisis at all, people come together or they fall apart. And it's very interesting how the news just talks about the falling apart and doesn't talk at all about the people who really fell in love. Or who renewed their vows, or suddenly realized that this was the right person for them. So it's amazing that we never talk about the positives of something rather than the negatives. But anyway, yes, this was a piece I wrote in the New York Times, and there's no question about it that we are not built for 24/7. We're not built for it. I'm a biological anthropologist, and for millions of years we lived in little hunting and gathering groups, and nobody was in lockdown. Men went hunting at least 4 days a week, sometimes spent the night or 2 nights out. Women went gathering with their friends and family, or they went off to other bands and spent as much as 2 weeks with somebody, with other friends and family. So the bottom line is we were not built for this. We are mammals. When we get back out of this mess, we will be back to doing a great many of the things that we already do. So I don't want to overlook the fact that this is a very difficult time for everybody. But there is a plus here. And I think it's quite an interesting plus. What's really going on is with this lockdown, people have more time to date. Even if they're working at home, they're not getting dressed, they're not commuting to work, they're not meeting friends after work, they have time to date and they have something to talk about. A lot of first dates are pretty shallow, but at this point we're seeing much more self-disclosure, and there's a good deal of academic data showing that self-disclosure, talking about how you really feel, your disappointments, your hopes, your dreams, things that are the problems during the lockdown, bring intimacy and attachment. So they got something to talk about, they got the time to talk about it. But the 2 other things that really interest me is sex is off the table. When you go out on a first date and it's a regular first date, you're always thinking, should I kiss him? Should I kiss her? Do I invite her home? Do I hold her hand? What do I do? Is gone, is off the table. Sex is off the table. And money is off the table too. When you're just meeting somebody for the first time, you can't decide whether you're going to be go to just a cheap coffee house and spend very little, or spend a lot of money on a fancy bar or even a restaurant. So sex is off the table, money is off the table, you got the time to court, and you got something to talk about. And indeed, what's really interesting is, I am chief science advisor to Match. And they did one of these quick and dirty studies a month ago, middle of April, just 2 days, just over a weekend, 2 days. And they asked people, how they've changed. And over 6,000 people answered them in 2 days. They were astonished. But what they found is before this COVID, only 6% of singles were willing to have a video chat, a video date, a Zoom or Skype or FaceTime date. And now 69% are not only willing to do it, but 1/3 of these 6,000 plus people had already met somebody and were going to engage in some sort of video chat. So what we're really seeing is a new stage in the courtship process. Prior to going on your first date with somebody, you're meeting on the internet. And so sex is off the table, money is off the table. You've got time to talk to somebody. You have time to get to know somebody. And that's a very valuable. I mean, in Jane Austen's days, they talked to somebody for a while before they actually met and the kissing started. And now they get to know somebody before they go out on this first date. So I actually think that it's the rise of a new stage in the courtship process of video dating. I think it's going to enable singles to meet people without the stress of money and sex, get rid of what they don't want before they have that first date. And so that on that first date, it's going to be much more meaningful. They're going to be relaxed. They're going to know they want to kiss the girl or the boy. They're going to know they want to spend the more money, and they're going to be much more relaxed. It's the rise of a new stage in the courtship process, which is very positive, I think.
I just want to add to people, if you have questions, there's a Q&A box at the bottom, and please put them in because we will take questions. So here's a question I have. So I have a friend who's been talking to someone for 2 months now. And all of them just petered out because they're not meeting.
Well, because they're not meeting.
Okay. And another scenario is I have a friend who, these friends are not me. So anyway, I have a friend who said she met someone and that she met and the relationship was starting and everything was great. But now that they can't be with each other and now they're talking, it just petered out because she was bored as hell with this person.
Well, if you're bored as hell with somebody even before you kiss them, that's a very good sign that you don't want to spend your time at it.
No, they were doing the kiss. They had met already. They were doing the kissing first, all that kind of stuff. So the hot and everything was going very, very well. But now that but the talking part, they realized, so that it just ended.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, if you're going to be with somebody for a lot of years, you got to be able to talk with them. I mean, there's all kinds of time that you can't be kissing them. And if you can't talk to them, I don't know about you, but I mean, you can kiss a lot of boys or a lot of girls, but if you can't talk to them, I think I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, talking is an important part of a partnership. And I think they've learned something very valuable. They're not going to spend any more time on something that in the long run is not going to work. I have great sympathy for the fact that they've achieved the realization that this is not going to work. I mean, it's pretty obvious that if you can't talk to somebody and if it's just kissing, I mean, I studied the brain circuitry of romantic love, and it's a very, very powerful brain system. And if they started doing the kissing and then started making love with each other, you can overlook a huge amount about somebody when you're madly in love with them. I mean, there's a whole brain regions linked with negativity bias that reduce inactivity. I mean, before I put people into a brain scanner with my colleagues who are madly in love, I asked them, what do you not like about somebody? And they could list what they did not like about that person, but then they just swept that aside and focused on what they did like. So I mean, this is a piece of good luck as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if they've now discovered something extremely valuable about another individual, unless they don't want somebody who's interesting and want just the kissing and hugging, then when this is over, they can go back to it. But in the long run, you got to be able to talk to somebody. If you're bored with somebody, or at least if you're bored with somebody, boy, I would say you've learned something very, very valuable.
Right. But you've always talked about that, Match.com or these other sites are introductory service, and that the key is to really meet the person because then your reptilian brain knows whether you're attracted to them. So what happens after 2 months when you're talking to someone and you may not meet them for another 6 months, who knows?
Yeah.
And that's a different thing. So here's the question. Should you be talking to more than one person at a time? And if so, how many people should you be talking to?
Well, I mean, I think if you really get very interested in people, you will naturally get rid of the others because, the lane, as it's a wonderful poem by a guy called Kabir, Kabir from India. And, he had a great line, the lane of love is narrow. There's room for only one. So, I mean, I think we've evolved three distinctly different brain systems for mating and reproduction. One is the sex drive. Second is feelings of intense romantic love. And the third is feelings of deep attachment. And just like that one couple that said, well, the sex was going perfectly well, and maybe there was some romance, but when they got into talking, they couldn't manage it. And this couple is quite the reverse. They're talking their heads off and never going to get into the kissing and hugging part. Once you trigger that brain circuitry for romantic love, they're going to stick on to the talking until the kissing can start. The other thing is, I would predict, and I'm not recommending this, but I would predict that after you've spent a long time talking to a human being on the internet, seeing them, visually seeing them, getting to know them, beginning to trust them, respecting them, being confident in the fact that they are for you and that they're very interesting. I would guess that people can wait a long time before the actual kissing starts. They could even do some kissing over the internet. I mean, I don't, there is something called phone sex and all of that. But once you really begin to trust somebody, it's my guess is that they're going to break these lockdowns and go out and meet them in person. It's remarkable once you fall madly in love with somebody, what people are willing to do, the dangers that they are willing to go through in order to be together. So it is my guess that those people who are doing an awful lot of talking with each other aren't going to wait 6 months to go out. They're going to know that the other person has had the does not have the disease. They're going to know that that person is not lying to them about who they've seen, where they've been, how careful they've been. They're going to understand this person well enough. And it's my guess, actually, that that couple will end up kissing and hugging before the lockdown ends or very soon afterwards. They're not going to wait 6 months.
I found this very interesting quote. It says, while infidelity used to be the main reason for divorce, today it's lack of space.
Boy, I tell you, I wrote another piece for the New York Times about couples who really are together. And the very first thing you have got to do when you're living, in lockdown is make a safe space for yourself so that when you're in that space, you can't be interrupted. Years ago, I lived with a man for almost 20 years, and we lived really in one room. We were both poor. He was a writer too. We were almost back to back every single day. But I had my space and he had his space, and he never interrupted me for hours. I never interrupted him. We would pass each other almost touching shoulders to get another cup of tea or coffee or something, but we created a safe space. So you've got to have your own space. When people need a feeling of autonomy. And when you get your safes, and when they don't have autonomy, when anybody can come in at any time and do anything, you can feel helpless and sometimes quite hostile. So the first trick of this quarantine, if you already know your partner and you've decided, you're living together or you're married or you're madly in love and you've chosen to do this, create yourself a safe space. Also create a daily ritual. There's something the academics call it intolerance of uncertainty. People need to know that, all right, well, we'll meet at lunch and from 12 to 12:30. We'll meet again for cocktails or whatever at 6. You need a safe space. You need a schedule. You need time to work, and you need time to play. And there's all kinds of ways that these people can play together, which will enhance the relationship. I mean, you can take a class together, do exercises together, take virtual tours of the Taj Mahal or the Hermitage or various countries. You should dress for dinner. This idea of just showing up in the same pair of sweatpants that you put on in the morning does not make sense. Maybe you've got a Halloween night where you grab anything from any closet and just show up. You can play story time is very important. in our hunting and gathering ancestry, people always assembled in the evening around the fire to tell stories. We can do that. You can plan your next vacation together. That's very exciting. Plan for things in the future, puzzles and games, and look at photographs together. This can work. You don't have to divorce. You can build a stronger partnership knowing that you can manage this together.
Well, there was a famous little meme going around and asking a man, okay, here are your choices during the quarantine. A, you're stuck with your wife and kids. He said B.
I loved it.
I guess I said that to you.
And I wouldn't be surprised if his wife chose B too, it's not just the man.
No, I'm sure, yeah.
But what's so interesting, David, I just one thing is, this is not like living together. This is not like marriage. I mean, when you're living together with somebody, you go off to see your daughter or your grandchildren or to school or to work or to, living together is not the same as this lockdown. So it's this big stress. There's no question about it that it's stressful, and it's stressful on everybody. What's interesting,
men can't watch sports.
You can even watch sports. Absolutely. You can watch sports, and you can have sports. You can do sports. You can play tiddlywinks or whatever it is. But, and one thing in terms of the sports, apparently the sales of sex toys is gone way up. All kinds of sex toys. So
sale of alcohol has gone way up too.
Absolutely. For women as well as men. Yep. And I wouldn't be surprised if drugs have gone way up too. I guess people have spare time. Maybe some of them feel as if they're almost on vacation time. Maybe people end up saying, well, I don't have to do anything this afternoon. We'll have a drink for lunch and, just keep going. So I think the fallout of this from this, David, is going to be astronomical. I'm really worried about children. I'm actually really worried about children. I may have mentioned to you, I have a girlfriend who's got a 10-year-old boy, completely stable child. 2 weeks ago, he walked into his kitchen of his mother's house, crawled into a cupboard, put himself in a fetal position, and wouldn't come out. And I've got 2 other girlfriends. They both walked into their children's bedroom, and the child's sitting there crying. I mean, they weren't built to be around you and me day in, day out. I mean, that's how children build who they are, learn what's right and what's wrong and how to win and how to lose and how to make friends and keep friends. They do it with their peers. I mean, for millions of years, we lived in these hunting and gathering groups, and children lived in these were hung around in these multi-age play groups. And without that, they can really crumble.
We also live in an age where more people are living alone.
Yes.
In the past, there were multi-generational households. So you could, the grandparents were there, so kids kind of had escape routes a little bit.
Yep, that's right.
So my daughter is, my daughter has a 2-year-old and a 2-month-old at home. And her husband's working from home. And I said, oh, it's nice family bonding time. And she said, Dad, I would rather my husband be at work. I'd rather my 2-year-old be in preschool. I'd rather my cleaning lady be coming. And I'd rather have a babysitter so I can go out once in a while.
Everybody understands your daughter. We all do. I'm currently in a hotel in Savannah, Georgia, because it was my birthday over the weekend, and I decided, I want to sit in a restaurant, have somebody serve me. I want to walk down a street, et cetera, et cetera. We weren't built for this. But it's a very interesting learning experience. Going back to that couple who were doing just fine with the hugging and kissing, and then they realized that they couldn't talk to each other. It's a very valuable time. I don't ever want it to happen again. I hope it never does. But the bottom line is we learn a great deal. And singles living alone, a great many of them, this is a time of recollection. You realize what you've got and you realize what you don't have. And there was a recent study, people keep sending me these studies. It was only 700 people in the study, but 41% of singles today have now decided they're going to really look for a serious relationship. And prior to this lockdown, they had not been looking for a serious relationship. So any kind of catastrophe pushes you forward to the next step. Here we've got people who've been hugging and kissing. Now they got to talk to each other, and they realize, we ain't going to the next step. Then you got other people who are going to be hanging in there. You're talking, can't wait to do the kissing and hugging, and we'll have a magnificent first date. As a matter of fact, it's begun to occur to me that there's going to be fewer first dates, but there's probably going to be more sex on the first date, because with all of this lockdown, and with all of the conversations, so you get to know somebody, by the time you're getting to the first date, you don't have to negotiate the sex. You already decided, I like this person, I want to go out with this person, and I can't wait to kiss and hug. So I think we're going to have fewer first dates, because with this new stage in the courtship process, meeting on the internet, talking on the internet, visually seeing the person on the internet, you're going to kiss fewer frogs, basically. You're going to get rid of the frogs on the internet stage of Facebook, FaceTime or Zoom or Skype or something. And then the first date's going to be much more meaningful and probably also more sexual.
Well, the New York City government has issued a sex and COVID-19 fact sheet.
Yeah.
And I think it's amazing. It says that you are your safest sex partner.
Yeah.
Things like that. The next safest partner is someone you live with. And they said you should avoid close contact, including sex, with anyone outside your household. And multiple partners, obviously. And they talk about kissing can easily pass the virus. Avoid kissing anyone who is not part of your small circle of close friends. Rimming might spread the virus. And Stephen Colbert said, I didn't know I was reading an X-rated document. Dental dams can reduce contact with saliva or feces. And they also said the virus has been found in the feces of people who are infected. It's been found in semen, but we don't know yet if it could be spread from one person to another through semen. So I'm just like, when I first saw this, and I just printed it out today, I'm just really amazed that I can even be reading something like this.
Well, first of all, they don't study the brain. That sounds all very reasonable, but when you're madly in love with somebody, if you fall in love with somebody and have good conversations about it, a whole pile of people aren't going to follow those instructions. They now trust the person. I do a lot of studies with Match, and one of them is called Singles in America. We do it every year. I know you know about it, but maybe the rest of us here do not. It's a national representative sample of singles based on the U.S. Census. So this is a real study. We do not poll the Match members. It's a real study. We've got data on 45,000 Americans, age 18 to 71 plus, Black, white, Asian, Latino, gay, straight, rural, suburban, urban, every part of the country. And when I ask what you're looking for, the top things that people say they're looking for, every single year that I ask, is they want somebody who respects them, somebody who they can trust and confide in, somebody who makes them laugh, somebody who makes enough time for them, and somebody who they find physically attractive. So once you've fallen madly in love with somebody on the internet, and it's completely possible to do that, you're going to overlook that list of what's going on there and go for it. Don't forget, courtship is a very important thing. You're fighting to win life's greatest prize, which is a mating partner. And once you've talked endlessly with somebody over several weeks on the internet, you've probably gotten to the point where you can trust them, where you can confide in them, when you respect them, they make you laugh, they're spending time with you, and you find them physically attractive. Boom, then that brain circuitry for romantic love will get in action, and you're going to overlook, David, what you just read. Okay,
so, all right, but you should still practice being safe.
I'm not suggesting that I don't have a dog in this fight. I agree with you that the best sex probably is with yourself, except I do think it's a little unrealistic to say that the best sex isn't really with your the partner that you know very well and you're living with. I mean, good sex. I mean, sex is a good thing for you. There's all kinds of good things. It releases testosterone, makes you feel better, increases the sex drive, releases dopamine, give you optimism, energy, focus, motivation. With orgasm, there's a real flood of oxytocin linked with feelings of attachment. Apparently, the endorphins go up for pain relief. You get glowing skin. Actually, sex can boost the immune system. It's good for heart rate, respiration, but promotes sleep, brings oxygen to the brain. So I think it's a little unrealistic to say that the best sex partner is yourself. I would say that the best sex partner is the person you're living with.
Right. So I want to talk about so Tinder did a very interesting thing. They said you can now talk to anyone in the world. And I'm thinking, well, interesting, but, someone from Norway contacted me and it's like, okay, but the odds of me meeting someone from Norway, it was kind of fun. I just look, it's kind of fun. Also, they said Tinder users made 3 billion swipes worldwide on March 29th. Most of the apps has ever recorded in a single day. In the UK, daily conversations rose by 12% between mid-February and the end of March. The bad news is that people are not, because of the economics, people are not subscribing to their the premium services, which allow you to talk to anyone you want, to reverse your swipe if you made a mistake, and all that stuff. So, we'll have to see how all this shakes out in the future.
Yeah, no, I think people are saving money. I mean, I look at the number of people that just don't even have a job. I mean, don't even know where they're going in the future. I am so worried about the economy. Well, we all are. So what's new? But that's interesting I do know from the study with Match, not only are 41% of singles now going to look for something serious, but a huge number are also willing to now meet up with somebody from farther away. So the Tinder data is following the trend of people now willing to meet people from even a different country.
All right, so now I'm going to take some questions from the audience. So I read Cupid in Quarantine about couples planning a vacation for after the coronavirus. For people who are beginning a relationship at this time remotely, would you likewise recommend talking together about possible things they would like to do together after the coronavirus?
Absolutely. Think about the future. And no question about it. Thinking about the future gives you hope. And you also find a good deal about that person, because if they want to, ride through the countryside on their motorcycle, shooting the top off tulips, and you want to go to Berlin to listen to the Philharmonic, right off the bat, you're learning something about somebody. So making plans with somebody, seeing what they really like is an essential part of a partnership, because if you're going to spend any real time with somebody, you got to have some of the same interests. So absolutely, plan for the future. Excellent. It's actually one of the first things that I say to people is plan your vacations, plan what you're going to do together after this is all over. And play, by the way, is extremely good for you. When you play with somebody, it drives up laughter actually drives up the dopamine system and gives you feelings of optimism and energy and focus and motivation. And when you play with somebody, it really increases brain growth in several brain regions. So, it's a form of play when you are deciding where you're going to go, what are you going to do, and you could probably even get on the internet together and go through the Hermitage or some other kind of place, some other music, travel together on the internet, order a pizza together, even though you're both in separate lockdowns, and then take a virtual trip. I think it's a great idea.
What guidance would you offer readers on how to meet people during the COVID-19 era if they are newly ready to date again after having been in long-term relationships, but are still very wary about the whole online dating concept?
Mm-hmm. So please hear me, whoever wrote that in, thank you for your question. These are not dating sites. These online dating sites are not dating sites. Everybody knows that in the business. What they are is introducing sites. That's all we do is introduce you to people. You say you want somebody from the neighborhood who's your size, shape, background, age, somebody who has some of the same interests. That's what we give you. But the only real algorithm is your own brain. And once you get out and meet somebody, your own brain clicks into action and you court exactly the way you always did. You smile the way you always did. You laugh the way you always did. You parade the way you always did. You assess the other person the way you always do. The misunderstandings about these dating sites is out of this world. All we do is introduce you to people. I'll say it again. The only real algorithm is your own brain. But if you do decide to go onto the internet, onto a dating site, or I would call them introducing sites, there's two things you really should know. The problem with these dating sites, there's no problem with them. The problem is that we don't know how to use them. This technology is so new that people don't know how to use it. So these are the two things I would recommend. Number one, after you've met 9 people and I mean see them face to face through FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, or in person after this is over, after you've met 9 people, not just talk to them, not just text them, but met them. After you've met 9 people, stop. Get off the dating site and get to know at least one of these people more. The more you get to know somebody, the more you like them. There's good data on that. The reason I say that is the brain is not built. There's a sweet spot. We got a sweet spot of about 5 to 9 options. And after about 9 options, the brain sort of short circuits. It goes into what we call cognitive overload or the paradox of choice, and you end up choosing nobody. So don't get yourself deluged. Don't do a blitz on meeting 1 billion people. After you've met 9 people or 5 people or 2 people or 7 people, but after you've met 9 people, get off the site and get to know at least one of those people more. The more you keep churning the system, the less likely you are to ever find the right person. That's number one. Number two, think of reasons to say yes. We have a huge brain region in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, actually right around here. And it's associated with what is called negativity bias. We remember the negative. For millions of years, it was adaptive. It was nice to remember who liked you, but if you didn't remember who didn't like you, you could die. So we're built to remember the negative. And when you meet somebody on the internet, you know so little about them that you can overweight some tiny little thing. You'll crack one joke and they don't laugh. And no sense of humor. Or you see them in person and they're wearing the wrong color shoes. Never work. Or they like cats and you like dogs. Never, forget it. Think of reasons to say yes. So stop after you met 9 people. Use your own brain. That's all we're going to do is introduce you to people. Don't make a big deal out of this. This is the primary way that people in the United States actually meet somebody. In 2017, I've got it for every year, but I happen to remember that this year right at the moment. 40% of people, singles, met their last first date on the internet, and only 25% met through a friend, and less than 10% met in a bar or at work or at school, etc. So it is the primary way of meeting somebody these days. Just learn how to do it. Get on one of these things, use your own brain, and after you've met 9 people, get off the internet and think of reasons to say yes. But do it. Everybody's doing it now.
Okay. So, Helen, have you seen shifts in dating activity? Specifically, did you see an initial upsurge, then decline as people began feeling pandemic and Zoom fatigue? And there's now an uptick given that restrictions have relaxed and people with cabin fever are anxious to get out and enjoy the summer.
Uptick in what? I didn't hear that word.
Uptick in basically people feel more relaxed. They want to go out.
Yeah.
It's warmer weather.
Yeah. Oh, I'm seeing it. I mean, when I was in New York, and I live in New York, in Central Park, I'm seeing large groups of people without the mask, sitting in groups. Now, a lot of them seem to be family groups or groups of people who know each other quite well. I'm certainly seeing it down here. I'm in Savannah, Georgia, and I don't see anybody wearing a mask. The people serving you in the restaurants are wearing a mask, but nobody on the street nobody is wearing a mask.
I don't point to Georgia as the greatest. I mean, the first things they allowed were massage parlors,
I'm
tattoo,
not supporting, I mean, I agree with you. I think tattoo parlors.
and bowling out and bowling.
Yeah, no, that does seem strange. I agree with you. I'm not supporting this concept of Georgia, but you asked whether people are going out, and they are going out. I don't know whether there's been an uptick in the virus in Georgia. I have not been following it. But
Yes.
we are mammals. I mean, David, you definitely know that we're mammals. We're built to go out. We're built to hug and kiss. I do think that we're going to have very social restrictions. I think that there's going to be a lot less sort of informal kissing of friends. I can see, and I would guess there's going to be a lot less shaking hands and hugging hello and goodbye and keeping your distance. And on the subway, I think, I don't know we're somewhat the same age. When I was growing up in New York, my mother had me wearing little white gloves when I went out. And my guess is there's going to be some new fashion statements, more sort of ascots that you can pull up if you're in a place that you're concerned, and more gloves in the subway or on the bus, and more people, working at home, although I doubt that's going to be as much as people think, because as I say, we are a social animal. We are built to be around people. The human brain has not changed in 300,000 years. 300,000, not going to change because we're in lockdown. We're going to get back to, and of course, when the virus, when the antidote to the vaccine becomes available, then I think we're going to go straight back to who we really are.
So I have a question, actually from a friend of mine from high school. When do you think it is safe to meet up in person safely during these times when you do not know who these people may have been around? What precautions are recommended? I live in Austin and things are slowly opening up, so meeting outside at a cafe or such a thing is happening more.
I think it is associated with your tolerance of risk. I study personality, as you know, and people are very expressive of the traits in the dopamine system in the brain. The dopamine system is linked with risk-taking and novelty-seeking and curiosity and creativity. And I would guess that is this kind of person who's going to waltz into the bar, put the mask on now and then, and take their chance. And there's going to be other people who are very risk-averse, really want to follow the rules, high serotonin people. The serotonin system in the brain is linked with social norm conformity, following the rules, and with caution. And I think that I call them builders. I call the other explorers. And I think that it's going to have to do with your degree of risk tolerance. Now, in one study that I did recently, 11% of singles say that they're going to just go out and keep dating the way they always did. Now, these people are probably very high risk kind of individuals, high expressive of the traits in the dopamine system in their brain, and willing to take their chances. And I think other people are going to spend a long time getting to know somebody, before they come anywhere near them. So I think it's going to be very individual.
Unfortunately, we don't exist in a vacuum, and willing to take your chances. If you are young and you go home and you have grandparents at home, you can infect them. So I'm not that supportive of people just willing to take their chances.
I'm not supporting anybody.
Okay.
I'm just talking about the human animal. Okay. And there's some people who are going to be very risk taking, and there's other people who are going to be very risk averse. I'm not supporting anything. I'm just let's not kill the messenger here.
We're not, don't worry.
Okay.
Dating, how would you compare the lockdown with a long distance relationship?
That's really interesting. I once studied truck drivers, and these are long distance relationships. And what they do is very ingenious. I remember one guy who he had a camera that he could turn on and watch his wife sleep. Now, this wasn't a peeping Tom. He trusted his wife. It just brought him great joy to watch his wife sleep. And you see these people who are married to somebody who goes on long tours overseas in the military, and they find ways to find a time to watch a movie together, to even cook a meal together. Now, even a 12-hour, time change, a time variation, and they'll find a time at 8 a.m. her time and 8 p.m. his time in Iraq or I don't know where, Philippines or wherever. And they are able. So, first of all, they've gone into this knowing it. I mean, they've already accepted that this is going to be part of the partnership. And whether they have a lot of phone sex, I wouldn't know, but I would guess that that's part of the deal. And that they find all kinds of times to sort of be together without touch. But as I say, we are mammals, and I'm positive that when they do get together, that they right back to being the way we are. But it is tough. When I do this Singles in America study, I got 45,000 people have answered over the last 9 years, and they do not want, singles do not want a long distance relationship. They do find it difficult to do, for very understandable reasons. We really weren't built for that.
So someone said, I wonder about whether upbringing and the environment under which individuals grows up affects the need for a safe space or the definition of personal space. If someone grows up in a large family in a small house, sharing bedroom with siblings, etc., would they be more comfortable in a relationship and would they feel more comfortable in a relationship in more confined living spaces? I'm not sure that's a simple question.
It's hard to know. I would imagine that there's some people who grew up in a big family and they just can't stand it. I mean, they fought all their life to get their sister out of the room so that they could finish reading a book, and there's other people who are just so used to it that they suffer more. I think it's going to be very individual, but what I really like about whoever wrote this is that your childhood always plays a role in who you are. It always plays a role. Now, I'm an identical twin. I grew up in the same bedroom with another girl, looked exactly like me, all of my, until we went off to college. And I think actually what it's given in me is an intense understanding of that we're all alike. This is why I study love and attachment. A lot of anthropologists study why people are all different, why the Hopi are different from the Zuni, why the Navajo are different from the peoples of Indonesia, et cetera. I study what we all share in common, which is feelings of intense romantic love, feelings of deep attachment. But I do think that your childhood, a good 50%, well, they say 40 to 60% of who you are comes out of your biology. That means that a good 40 to 60% of who you are comes out of your environment, comes out of your childhood, and your childhood always affects. But I would say that, it could go either direction. Some people who grew up in a huge family say, you know what, I'm having one child who's going to be in another room. I need my privacy with my girlfriend or my wife or my love, whatever. And there's other people who say, I got to have 10 children of my own. That's the way I grew up. So I think it's going to be very individual. It depends on what kind of childhood that was, whether you had safe spaces when you were in this thing, whether you had to fight for food, whether you had to eat really fast because things were passed and your older brother always ate everything that you had, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's going to be very individual.
Well, it's like people who grew up in suburbia like me said, I like living in cities. And then there are people who grew up in suburbia said, I want to stay there forever.
I'm with you, kid. I don't ever want to. I grew up in suburbia with you. I never want to go. I never wanted to go back. I love New York City. It's exciting to me. And suburbia seems very confining. And then again, I know people who grew up in a city who just want a picket fence and a backyard and the dogs and the cats. And,
Well, here's the other question I have. They say about 400,000 people have left the city. And I guess, this virus is not going away soon. And so the things that I love about the city, like seeing a Broadway show, going to a museum, going to a sporting event, going to theater, if these things aren't available, I'm not sure I want to see a play where I have to sit 6 feet apart from somebody. But I'm not sure I want to be in a play that everyone is jammed together in again. I think this is going to change things.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I'm so worried because, as you know, I'm a theater goer. And and how about the Metropolitan Opera? They're going to fold if everybody's 6 feet apart. I mean, because, a $300 ticket is going to be a $3,000 ticket if so many seats are empty. And, I'm a public speaker, and laughter, when you're in a packed group, laughter travels, emotion travels. You're talking to a whole organism, which is an audience. And without that, even the speaker is jeopardized. But the bottom line is, who's going to come to New York if the theaters are shut and the opera is shut and Broadway is shut and the Metropolitan Museum is shut? Who's going to come to a place where, you only have to eat outside, which is nice in the summer, but 10 feet apart, and the server's got a mask and gloves on and everything. And New York really, depends on tourism. It's apparently the single greatest form of revenue for New Yorkers. And if the tourists don't come, then the people don't have the jobs, and then they're going to be in breadlines, and then the children won't get an education, and on and on and on. I mean, this is why this vaccine is it's important for many reasons. It's certainly important for all of our health, but it is certainly important for work, and it's certainly exceedingly important for our cultural lives. And various people are saying, oh, well, everybody's going to move to the suburbs. Nobody's going to want to move in a group. People are going to want to drive their car to work instead of take the subway or the train or the bus. I don't think so. I think when we get this vaccine, people are going to go back. I mean, you and me, I'm not going to go live in the middle of nowhere. And it's not who I am. And same with you. And I think we'll live this through. It'll end. And then there's going to be another virus that comes along. Don't forget, we've always had viruses. We've always had plagues. Oddly enough, this is the first time the whole world is shut down. I think they're going to be writing about this for decades, if not centuries, for the mess we're in.
Yeah, well, they said after September 11th that nobody would live in Manhattan, and everyone would leave. And actually, it's more expensive to live in Manhattan since 9/11. It's more, prices have gone up and everything. But the only time prices went up was in 2000, went down was the recession in 2008.
Yeah.
So here's the last question that's readers submitted. Well, someone said, what about taking a walk? I guess I can answer that. That's, a lot of people are taking walks, just maintain social distance. Okay.
Yeah, don't hang around with somebody who's sneezing, wheezing, coughing, doubled over. I'm not Fauci, so you know as much as I do, but I take walks all the time.
Do you think that the initial phase of courting, currently virtual, will continue once the world returns to normal?
It's a beautiful question, David, and yes, I do. I think it will. I think that will be the single and perhaps only change, that we will go from meeting on the internet to courting on the internet and then meeting in person. The old style of introduced on the internet and going straight to meeting, I think fewer and fewer people are going to do that, because when you get to know somebody on the internet, sex is off the table, money's off the table, don't have to kiss any frogs. You can get to know somebody before you go out. And I think then, so we're going to have more of the weeding out process on the internet. And then first dates are going to be more and more meaningful, because you will already know enough about this person. So you trust them, you respect them, you like them, you'd like to kiss them. And I think first dates are going to have fewer first dates, but they're going to be much more meaningful first dates.
Okay. One thing that I've read, I don't know if it's true, and I don't, who knows, but they said that people really don't feel like having sex right now, especially at the height of the pandemic, and also with the recent killing of Mr. Floyd. And there's like a sadness in people, and that is not conducive to being happy. That's not conducive to having sex, and I think that is going on also.
I think that we're going to see much more depression.
Yeah.
I don't know if we see more suicide or homicide down the road, but we're seeing violence right now. Yes. And
I think part of it is like this pent up, I just want to get out and run around. Yeah.
We're mammals. We're built to get out and run around. And at some point, you know, people, I'm not condoning it, but I do think that all these people are taking their life in their hands. And I don't know if during these riots, people are wearing masks or not. I don't know. Are they?
Some are, some aren't.
Yeah. But they're in close quarters and
they're in very close quarters, and the Dr. Offit is in charge of the vaccine program. They asked him about this, and he said, the virus doesn't know what color you are. I mean, after World War I, there was celebrating in the streets, every country in the world. Well, in the winning country.
yeah, right, exactly.
But I said that, this was the time of the Spanish flu, and the cases went up because people were congregated together.
Wow.
During protests, he says, people
Wow.
are 9 feet apart. There are a lot of young people not wearing masks. There's a police chief who made a beautiful speech, and someone said, "He's not wearing a mask."
Yeah.
Our leader Donald Trump doesn't wear a mask ever.
Right.
That
Right.
we've seen, and so I don't think that, I think that people, when they're looting and rioting, aren't thinking about their health safety, but I would hope that the people who are marching peacefully, and who I do support, that they will take this into consideration, because the last thing we need is to spread the pandemic further.
I wrote a whole piece about that, the Spanish flu, and I don't know. When I wrote that piece, I thought that 20 million people had died, and sometimes I see in the press that as much as 50 million have died. I mean, that's serious. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because we're in a terrible time. I mean, let's face it, it's a terrible time.
Spanish flu had a second wave. Living in an uncertain time, I think, makes you want to hook up with someone to have a little more certainty. Is that true?
Absolutely. And we're seeing that. Our data show that 41% of singles right now who might not have been looking for a serious partnership are now looking for a serious partnership. I actually think, and I call it slow love. We have had for some time now and I'll send you my article. You've read my article on it, but I'll send it again. Maybe you can send it out to people. But the bottom line is what we're seeing is that we're seeing the pre-commitment stage, extend. I mean, single women used to marry at age 20, single men used to marry at age 22. Now single women are married at almost age 28 and men at almost age 30. So we're seeing this long period of courtship before marriage. And I do think that this epidemic is going to slow it down even more. You're going to really want to get to know somebody before the kissing starts. And you want to get to know and live with them, for a period of time to make sure that you're really compatible. And what's good about that is that I've looked in 80 societies through the demographic yearbooks of the United Nations. And the later you marry and the longer you court before you wed, the more likely you are to stay together. So with all of this crisis going on, we're seeing the slowing down of partnership, of courtship and partnership formation. And this could lead to more stable marriages in the years to come.
There's also a trend, which it's just, there's some joke that the Swedish government just recommended people to couple up. I don't think it was a serious headline, but there is the thing where someone just says, "I'm looking for someone to just sleep with during the quarantine," and so they're not looking for romance. They're just looking for sex and companionship. And what do you think about that? Because that's happening also.
One thing about having sex with somebody, any kind of stimulation of the genitals drives up the dopamine system in the brain. And the dopamine system is basic to the feelings of intense romantic love. So I've studied one night stands, and I've even asked 5,000 people, did you ever start sort of a casual one night stand relationship that turned into a long-term partnership, and 1/3 of them said yes. So casual sex is not casual unless you're so drunk you can't remember it. It's not casual. Things happen in the brain, and these people, and you read about it all the time. You people, somebody who's going out with somebody for what, for 5 times, and they like them, and then they choose to move in together during this thing. Well, they're gonna, it's entirely possible that the sex that they have during their quarantine together is going to trigger feelings of intense romantic love. And then, of course, with orgasm, there's a real flood of oxytocin linked with feelings of deep attachment. So it's my guess that those people who just say, oh, I'm just going to hook, I'm just going to get somebody to live with for the next few months. Well, that in itself is quite an endeavor, because you can't have sex all day and all night. You got to decide how to eat, where to, how you're going to handle all kinds of other things. So you're leaping into a partnership. You're not leaping into just a hookup. But the actual, it's going to drive them together or drive them apart. I mean, sex is not casual, and it could really trigger the dopamine system, fall madly in love, really trigger feelings of attachment, or it can trigger feelings of disgust. In one study of kissing, they found that over 50% of both men and women had sort of begun to like somebody. And then the kissing, and then they had the first kiss, and it was the kiss of death. Never again. And the partnership simply just ended. So presumably these people who've had just a few dates and then decide to weather this thing together, something's going to happen in that partnership. It's going to become very exciting and thrilling and romantic, or these people are going to say, when I get out of this, I'm never seeing this person again. So
Right.
it's a dangerous thing to do. I mean, you're playing with some of humankind's most powerful brain systems. Sex drive is powerful. A lot happens in the brain. When you have sex with somebody, 5 of the 12 cranial nerves become active. I mean, you can smell them, hear them, touch them, taste them, and feel them. And so you're collecting, the brain is, detonating with all kinds of various feelings and responses. So it's going to be very interesting to find out after this is over, who fell madly in love and who's gone the moment that they can.
So I was speaking with a friend of mine, my best friend in France, and he was saying he's really enjoying this time. He enjoyed the time of quarantine. He said, I didn't feel any responsibilities and have to go anywhere. He said, if only my wife weren't here. That was great.
Oh, that's a scream. Plan B, right? B, I'll take B. I know a lot of people in New York who are quite happy with it, but when they have something in common, these people are all writers and they all work at home, and they have for a long time. And all of them have been living with or married to somebody for a long time, and so they've adjusted to this. So it's not a huge adjustment for them. But boy, these people with children and people who live entirely alone and they've just started dating again and don't know how to use the internet and are uncomfortable with dating sites, or older people who are really scared to go out for very good. I mean, I have a friend who's 87 and he's got heart problems. He cannot go out and people cannot come in, and his wife is now in a different place and comes and visits him, I guess whenever. But I mean, all kinds of different situations that we get ourselves into, and we realize, oh my goodness, what was I thinking? Why did I marry her? Or wow, I finally know what you do every day at work. I had no idea that you worked on this and that. And oh, I didn't realize how much it takes to run a household. And now we're doing it together. And I was just talking to a friend of mine, Justin Garcia, at the Kinsey Institute. I'm sure you know him. And, he just bought all new furniture for his house, something that he never would have done because he's way too busy. So there's pluses and minuses. Bottom line is, it's a shame this ever happened. It's going to happen again. We're going to learn about it. 41% of singles are now going to seriously look for a partner. They're going to learn how to use the internet and take that next big step in life.
Gretchen Rubin said one of the nicest things that she said, I get a secret pleasure out of seeing how other people live.
Oh,
Yeah.
isn't that interesting? So do I. I've heard other people do that too. I mean, particularly these big TV stars, Chris Cuomo, and sitting in the basement by himself, and you see the background is just all white, grim background, and then other beautiful backgrounds of people. My background seems to be a hotel room, but I got it all worked out when I'm in New York with a better background than this.
I also use virtual backgrounds. I can go to Hawaii at times and stuff like that. So.
I haven't figured out how to do that, but my guess is as there are more, that's a good point, as there's more dating on the internet, more FaceTime and Zoom, people are going to construct a certain part of the house, that they're going to figure out what the backgrounds are. Yes, they're going to figure out the lighting. I mean, I can see my lighting right now is a nightmare. But they're going to figure out absolutely ways to be more attractive, what to wear, what to have around, get big sister into the other room and try and make it not noisy and different kind of makeup, even, who knows. But it's a time of real adjustment for every single person on this planet. That's what's so interesting. Every single person. There's nobody this hasn't touched.
There's going to be Zoom coaches.
Yes, they're going to be Zoom coaches. Well said. I like that.
So you have a Zoom consultant. How do I look good in Zoom?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's one more question. Let me just came in. Okay, with 41% of the daters now wanting a long-term relationship given COVID, what was the percentage before COVID?
I don't know the answer. When I for the last 9 years, I have asked this question to 5,000 Americans. So I do have data on 45,000 Americans. And so it's going to vary from 1 year to the next. But if I had to guess, I don't know. I better not guess. It's going to depend on age and a whole pile of other things. So I don't even know this 41% who say that they want it, how old these people are, whether they're very young, whether they're middle-aged, whether they've now divorced, whether they've been a playboy or a playgirl for a period of time and this has pushed them over the edge. All of this data, I'm sorry I don't have that data for you. It's very important. But I think this 41% was 41% of people who might not have been looking at it for it before. Now, I do know that 85% of Americans will marry by age 49. We are a pair-bodied species. I write a lot of books on this. My most recent book, Anatomy of Love, goes into the whole evolution of why we pair up to rear our young. So, 97% of mammals don't do that. We do. Only 3% of mammals actually form a partnership to rear their young, and people are among them. So we are built to form a partnership. And the vast majority of both men and women will form a real partnership by middle age. Now, a certain number of them will have a child or two and then divorce and find a new partnership. But we are an animal that forms partnerships. We are, and I think that what this COVID issue is doing is just speeding up that process for people who are just having a good time. Now they're beginning to realize that it's not so much fun. They need a partner.
Yeah, that's true. So let me see. One more question. This will be the last question. This question. I don't think is that trending up or down. I don't know if we can answer that. So I'm not sure. Okay. So so any final thoughts you want to say to people?
I'm as concerned as everybody else. No question about that. It's a tragedy for humanity. I think the fallout from this might be just as bad as the virus itself on children, on jobs, on culture, as you say, David. It's a time of dramatic change for the human animal. But I really do think that we're going to get back to being who we always are. I mean, don't forget, I mean, I don't know if you ever read Boccaccio's the Decameron.
Yeah.
And it was all about life in the 1300s during that plague. Well, that plague came, that plague ended. Even the, the Spanish flu that killed a huge number of people came and left. And I mean, we've been around on this planet for 4.4 million years, and we're going to be around a whole lot longer, and we're going to get back to being who we are. We are built to love. Love is primordial, adaptable, and eternal.
So Shakespeare supposedly wrote King Lear during the bubonic plague. So
That's right.
I feel like a slacker.
I am a slacker. A lot of us are. We're beginning to realize what it's like to take a vacation.
All right, well, I want to thank Helen Fisher for spending this time with us. I'm David Levine. Our next talk is going to be on artificial intelligence and a book by Susan Schneider. And also Maria Konnikova is going to be talking about her new book comes out in 3 weeks, and where she wrote the book How to Think Like Sherlock Holmes, and she also wrote The Confidence Game. And she decided to try her hand at poker, and she became a poker champion.
Wow.
So anyway, this is great. And so are you working on a new book?
I have 2 books that I really have got to work on, but I haven't faced into that yet. You know what it's like to write a book. Oh, it's so time consuming. You're working on all the holiday mornings and, Saturday evening, and you can't wait to get back to the desk, and you're just so busy at it. And so I've been putting it off, but the time has come. Time has come. Actually, I started yesterday.
Okay. Great talking to you, and we'll see you in New York. Safe flight back.
Thank you, David. Thank you. And thanks everybody else for joining us. I really appreciated it. And good luck.
Thank you so much. You too. Stay safe. Don't touch your face. Don't touch your 401k.